Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on international research funding opportunities. My name, can everybody hear me? Thumbs up? Yes? Okay, great. My name is Diane Bostenjack. I'm the membership manager for the American Institute of Biological Sciences. AIBS is a national scientific organization dedicated to advancing biology for the benefit of science and society. One way we do this is by providing decision makers information, and we do this independently and in partnership with our members and business partners. This webinar is part of our webinar series started over a year and a half ago on leadership in biology. And today's webinar is being sponsored by Burke Inc. Our past webinars have focused on things from gene drive, scientific peer review, to careers in biology. I encourage you to visit our website to find out more about our past and future webinars. For today's webinar, we have an excellent panel that will be discussing opportunities to do research or to train abroad. But before we start, I would like to go over some housekeeping. A quick reminder, this meeting is being recorded for archival purposes. If you have any issues, please use the chat feature and someone from AIBS will assist you. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. To ask a question, please type in your question into the Q&A feature and someone from AIBS, specifically me, will relay your question to the presenters. Thanks again for joining today's webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rebecca Keiser. Dr. Rebecca Keiser is the head of the Office of International Science and Engineering at the National Science Foundation. Her office manages several programs that support international research opportunities for students and researchers.
Well, thank you very much, Diane. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm going to start sharing my screen so that you can see my slides. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about the National Science Foundation. We are a U.S. government agency, and we have about an $8 billion budget. 93% of that budget goes directly out to researchers to fund basic research. The only area of basic research that we do not fund is biomedical, because we have the National Institutes of Health that takes care of biomedical research. So let me tell you a little bit about us. We are made up of 7 different research directorates. Each one focuses on a particular discipline or set of interrelated disciplines. And then that circle is around the picture of me. That's my office, the Office of International Science and Engineering. We have programs that we run where the focus is international collaboration. And we have about a $50 million budget that we dedicate to those programs. However, we also have a lot of international collaboration through our research directorates themselves, and my office helps enable those collaborations. In fact, our largest international partner happens to be Germany, and so you'll hear from Max in a little bit, who I'm sure will also touch on some of the partnerships that DFG has with NSF. We collaborate internationally through the National Science Foundation for these goals. We want to advance the frontiers of science and engineering, and the best way to do that is through international collaboration. We want to work with the best scientists in the best facilities around the world. And we also find that international collaboration helps spur innovation. It brings together a variety of different ideas from different cultures, and scientists want to work together across borders, and it's our job to really help enable that. We also work to prepare a globally engaged U.S. science and engineering workforce. And so we focus on student programs to provide international student research opportunities, as well as on programs for early career researchers to do research abroad. Okay? The funding that we provide goes to the U.S. side of a collaboration. So we'll fund the U.S. institution and the U.S. researchers, and then we'll form agreements and partnerships with our international funding agency counterparts for them to fund their parts of the collaboration. International collaboration is an enabler. It enables transformative science and engineering. And I truly believe that it does have the impacts that you see on the screen. It drives the economy. An example is we have a collaboration with China You all probably recall a couple of years ago when there was a huge algae bloom in Lake Erie, and it cut off the entire water supply to the city of Toledo, Ohio. There are very similar but larger algae blooms in China. And so we formed a collaboration with our Chinese researcher counterparts so that we can study these blooms together, understand the causation, and help prevent them from happening in the future. Similarly, we have a collaboration with South Korea in robotics. Korea is incredibly advanced, especially in humanoid robotics, and we send groups of US students to study in Korean labs and institutes so they can understand this robotics development and bring it back to the US. In the area of national security, we also, of course, have funding that helps. We funded a researcher from Northwestern University who collaborated with counterparts in the Middle East and Europe to help us understand a little bit more about the origins of political extremism. And he recently testified in front of the UN Security Council on his findings to hopefully help counterbalance that extremism in the future. And we advance global leadership. Through the things that we collaborate on scientifically, we find that we in the US can help lead, and we can help other countries in their leadership as well. And of course, science problems are global, and we can't just do it alone. So working together, we can help with this global understanding and science and engineering problems. We engage internationally by investing in people. Again, as I said, we want to create this globally engaged US science and engineering workforce, and I'll talk about some of the programs we have in that realm on a future slide. We drive research. We form collaborations based on intellectual merit, and we all contribute to the partnership and to the research together. We partner on facilities and infrastructure. We fund ground-based telescopes, for instance, in Chile, and these are truly international. They're located in Chile. We have partners from Europe, Asia, and Australia, for instance, together with us, where we all contribute resources, and then we all share in the research data that comes out of it. And we lead in international forums. A forum in which we collaborate with DFG, for instance, is called the Global Research Council. And this is a group of about 60 international funding agencies where we gather together on a regular basis and we share best practices and information that is going to help research communities in every country. For instance, the last meeting we talked about ways to enhance the status of women in research. So when we form an international collaboration, we look at the following criteria. We want to make sure, again, that there's true intellectual collaboration, that both sides of the research are helping to accelerate scientific advances. We also want to make sure that there's mutual benefit in what we contribute resource-wise. We want to leverage our NSF investments and resources together with our international partners' resources. And we want to make sure that we advance the workforce development goals that I touched on earlier. So in our programs through my office, we require actually for US graduate students to be part of those proposals. This is the percentage of gross domestic product that's dedicated to research and development. And you can see the growth through time. Again, an argument about why we need to collaborate together to take advantage of all these resources around the world. We see huge growth, of course, in China over the past 13 to 15 years. The European Union has a large amount of GDP that it's also spending on research and development. The US as well, and South Korea and Japan. So I just wanted to put this up there to show you why it's so important that we all work together in science and engineering. Just a chart on where we work in the world. You can see it's pretty much everywhere. We have ships. We run the US Antarctic program. We have instruments globally. And we work in education and international partnerships. So just an example, again, of how global science and engineering truly is. Our main student program in my office is called International Research Experiences for Students, IRIS. And this is a program for both undergraduate and graduate students. We fund the principal investigator who proposes a project together with his international partner counterpart. And then we fund cohorts of undergraduate and graduate students to go abroad to work in an international lab on a project. It's 3 years of funding, so we're able to fund 3 years, 3 different cohorts of students to go and do this work. And it's a $250,000 maximum budget. You can see the areas of the world in which we've sent students to do this research. We're currently doing the review panels for the latest solicitation of IRIS, and we'll have another solicitation coming out next year in 2018. Our other major program is Partnerships for International Research and Education, or PIRE. We have 22 international partners in this program, including Germany, and these are 5-year awards. The average award is $4 million. We fund all areas of basic research that are part of NSF, and the main requirement is that there has to be an international collaborator on the proposal. There also have to be U.S. graduate students that are part of it. We're also going through review panels now for the latest solicitation and hope to announce those who are funded very soon. This infuses innovations at the nexus of food, energy, and water systems. And this is not an OISC, International Science and Engineering program per se. It's an interdisciplinary program where funding is provided by many of our different research directorates. What we're looking at here, however, is ways that we can incorporate some formal international partnerships for the solicitation that's going to be coming up in 2017. Because this is an area, the nexus of food, energy, and water systems, that again is truly international. What we understand and what we need to understand in the future related to food systems has a direct impact on energy and water systems, and everything else has an impact on each other in these 3 systems. So we know that we have to work together to understand this, and so look for some international solicitations coming at this on this later this year. What we're focusing on in the future, these are what we call NSF's 10 big ideas. There are 6 research ideas and 4 process ideas, all of which are going to have either formal or informal international collaboration. And what I mean by this is for some of these ideas, we'll look to do some formal agency-to-agency international collaborative relationships where perhaps we do joint solicitations with an international partner, or we do what we call Dear Colleague letters, which is when we send letters out to the U.S. research community that currently has NSF funding and say that we'll give some supplemental funding to them for collaboration with particular international partners. And then others will be organically international. So our research communities will have international collaborators, and we don't need to do that much formally at the agency level because there are collaborations that already exist. We're in the process now of developing these formal collaborative plans, and we haven't really finalized anything as yet, but this is something that's going to be coming up after we have some further conversations with our international partners to see what their interests are and where they really do want to establish some formal collaborations. So we're expecting these ideas to be funded at some level starting in 2018, and so there's more to come on these. Now I'll stop there because of course you have a lot of information coming from our other panelists, but during the Q&A I'm happy to answer additional questions on this. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Keiser. I'm going to go ahead.
Stop sharing my screen.
We're going to go ahead and move it over to our next presenter, and I'm going to introduce Max Vögler, Dr. Maxwell Glar is the director of the North American Office for the German Research Foundation, DFG. DFG is the German equivalent of the U.S. National Science Foundation and offers several opportunities for international research. Dr. Vögler, go ahead.
Thank you, Diane, and also thank you to Julie and AIBS for setting this up. Let me also try to share my screen here. Hold on one second. Okay, is that working?
There you go, perfect.
There we go, perfect. Okay, so thanks so much. And yes, indeed, the DFG, the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft of the German Research Foundation, is the German equivalent of the National Science Foundation. We also fund all areas of the sciences, including the more basic parts of the of biomedical research, and also the humanities. So we actually do archaeology to zoology, the whole shebang. So what I thought I'd do today is focus on a couple of different things. First, give you an overview, a little bit of the German science landscape, just a couple of slides on this, because I know we're in the US here, not in Germany. Then 2 slides on what the DFG is and how it's organized, and then some slides on programs and international collaboration. So to begin with the German research landscape. So Germany is, in a sense, very similar to the US. We also are very close to spending 3% of our GDP on research and development, and about 2/3 of that, so the vast majority, is done by industry. And 1/3, or about 1% of GDP, is actually funded by the federal government, which is very similar to how the US breaks down as well. And if you look at the different organizations that are important for science in Germany, here are just the most important acronyms in terms of the places where science is done. You'll see here on the top right, that's the business, that's the 2/3 of GDP. But the universities are the largest single place where research happens in Germany, but the non-university research institutes, which are things like the Fraunhofer associations that focus on industry and applied research, the Helmholtz Association, which is our version of the national labs and more targeted programmatic research, and then the Max Planck Society, which runs a series of about 76, 77 institutes that are focused really on basic research questions, and also the Leibniz Association, which is hard to define other than saying it's a smorgasbord of smaller research institutes that focus on research with societal relevance in all disciplines. And together, this really makes up the German science system in a very, very basic way. What I also wanted to emphasize is that these are not physical places. So Max Planck, Fraunhofer, the universities, of course, but also Leibniz and Helmholtz are not located in any single place, but rather each of them consists of a series of institutes that are spread throughout Germany, both in terms of disciplines and in terms of geography. And you can see there's a large cluster in Berlin or in Munich, but also throughout Baden-Württemberg and North Rhine-Westphalia in the northwest and southwest. Okay, as for the DFG, we're similar to the NSF, but a little bit different. So we are the central public funding organization for basic research, but we are not per se a government agency. We're actually a self-governing body of science and research, so it's something like a 501c3 in the US, a nonprofit association that just happens to get a good amount of money from both the federal government and the states each year, which we then use to fund science. We're a member organization, so the research-intensive universities in Germany are our members, and they elect our president and our vice presidents each year, or every 3 years. And they also, in a larger sense, tell us what it is that we should be focusing on and what we should be doing. We serve all branches of sciences and the humanities, as I said before, and have a couple of special points where we do focus on early career researchers and looking at sort of career trajectories for early career researchers to try to see that the career path that people entering the field is something that is good for them. We also promote the equality of opportunity between men and women and broaden the participation of women in science. And we also advise the public and parliaments and public authorities on scientific matters. So a debate like synthetic biology or like CRISPR-Cas9 at the moment is something where the DFG often puts together a working group, issues a report, and says this is what science thinks on issue X or Y. And finally, and this is the reason that I'm here in Washington, D.C., is that we also work on cooperation between scientists and academics at home in Germany and abroad. just like Rebecca said before for the NSF, taxpayer dollars tend to like to stay at home, whereas scientists tend to like to work all over the place. And so it is our job as NSF, as DFG, as our Japanese, Chinese, and Italian colleagues, it's our job to get together and try to help scientists do whatever it is that they want to do. So, and here's the general spread of where the money goes within the DFG so that you get a sense of how the disciplines are spread. The yellow is the humanities and social sciences. The red is the life sciences, which you can see is the largest part of what we fund, although again, that includes some of the more basic science of the biomedical space, as well as plant sciences, biology, and so on and so forth. The green, that includes the natural sciences, which is everything from physics, geosciences, chemistry, and everything that's not life sciences. And finally, the blue is engineering, which includes computer science as well. Okay, moving on to programs and collaboration. The most important thing that I would say is that we try very hard not to have specific programs for international collaboration, but rather to try to say that all our programs incorporate and can incorporate the integration of international components within the proposal. So we allow guest professorships, student exchanges, mobility costs for doctoral students, postdocs, or PIs, all to be part of any grant, whether it's a individual PI grant or a multi-PI coordinated program kind of grant. And this for us is very important because we always like to say our priority is to fund excellent research, or better said, our priority is to try to not have priorities and to rather just do what the German research community would like to do and to enable that. That said, we do have a couple of special programs that we've developed over the years to support international research because there are some specific challenges with it. And I'll cover a couple of those here. The first one that I'll cover has to do with what we call the initiation of international collaboration. This is really a small program that enables German PIs to do smaller workshops together with foreign partners, or to do short research stays abroad, or invite foreign researchers to come to Germany for research stays in Germany. You can combine all sorts of different things in different ways. So you have 12 months in which to do something like a guest stay in a foreign country, then a joint workshop of up to 10, 15 people at one of the places, and then also invite the foreign researcher to come to your lab for a couple of months in Germany. It does rely on matching funds, though within the North American context, we found that we try to be very holistic. We don't require complementary financing through the NSF or within Canada through NSERC or a partner organization. We expect the PIs to figure something out, and often they use intramural funds. Sometimes they do use NSF or NIH funds, but we're very open and holistic as to how matching funds can be put together. The second program, and this is really the thing that I want to emphasize the most for senior PIs, is that our main research program is called the Research Grant, and it focuses on the individual PI, and it basically means any PhD at a German institution can apply for anything at any time. We have no deadlines, and we have no set disciplinary boundaries. And what we really encourage people to do is, if you want to work together, for example, with a US PI, and the US PI wants to apply to a grant in one of the NSF programs, whether it's in the Science Directorate, whether it's in the Geosciences Directorate, whether it's in the Social, Behavioral, and Economics Directorate, you can do that because ultimately the deadlines can match up since we don't have any deadlines. And then we will often work on an ad hoc basis with the program directors on the NSF side to try to see how we can coordinate the logistics of the review process so that we don't necessarily have to have a joint call on this. And this is one of the things that I know Rebecca knows very well as well. You can't have a joint call in every scientific discipline with every partner organization in the world every year. It would drive all of us absolutely bonkers. So we try to be very receptive and bottom up in how we try to enable this. And again, for the German side, the research grant, the normal research grant, is the means to basically have them participate in whatever way they want to participate with one of their foreign collaborators. Another aspect of the research grant is that you can also apply for your own position, for your own FTE within the grant. And this is something that is attractive to foreign researchers who want to do a postdoc in Germany, or even people who are a little bit farther along who want to use a grant like this to try to integrate into the German research system. So you can also apply for a normal research grant and at the same time ask for an FTE for yourself in it. You need a host institution and, of course, a good project idea. And you also, especially for the more senior level or mid-career level people, you also have to somehow be able to demonstrate that you're using it to try to integrate into the German research system. But it's the same idea, anybody, anytime on any subject, no deadlines, and you can apply as a postdoc or as a mid-level researcher to try to integrate into the German research system. For postdocs, of course, we don't expect that. It's a way to get a postdoc in Germany. And finally, I also wanted to talk about what we consider our flagship program for international collaboration. And this is similar to PIRE at NSF, which is called International Research Training Groups. The idea here is that you have 2, sometimes even 3, universities that want to cooperate on a complementary idea, scientific idea, and you usually have about 4, 5, 6 PIs on each side, and then 15 to 20 PhD trainees on each side. And they really put together a joint research program. The way it ends up looking is that after you've developed the common interest and the complementary expertise as to why these 2 places should work together, you really try to create a structure in which the PhD trainees have the joint supervision from the faculty. In some cases, there's even a joint degree, although we don't see that all that often. But there's definitely joint publications, joint summer schools, joint activities, so that the PhDs really spend part of their time at the other institutions, spend most of their time at home, have an advisor on the other side as well, and get some sort of training and expertise on the other side. So at the end of the term, by the time you get your PhD in one of these programs, you really are a very internationally diverse and internationally minded PhD, hopefully, which is also good for career prospects. We have these all over the place. We don't have any disciplinary or country boundaries. It's really whatever the cat drags in, and it better be a good proposal. And if it goes through the evaluation and does very well, then it gets funded. And we also here don't have any partner requirements. The other side, which for the US or for Canada usually is the NSF, sometimes NIH, or in Canada, NSERC or SSHRC, does have to put together some sort of financing. But again, we found that US PIs tend to be very creative in how they put these things together. And the 6 US joint US-German IRTGs that we have are really all over the place. 2 are co-funded through NIH. I think 2 or 3 are co-funded through NSF, but through all sorts of different programs, from individual grants to MERSECs to research centers to APPLIER. So it really, we're flexible, and we really just want the PIs to be able to put together something that'll help the PhD students do interesting things. And the final thing I wanted to mention is something that we call the Macarthur Fellowships, which isn't a grant program in itself, but rather it's a fellowship program that PIs in Germany can integrate into any of their grants, whether it's an individual research grant or it's one of these larger research training groups, or even one of our research centers, which I'm not mentioning here, but are programs for German PIs. But basically, Macarthur Fellows allow the German PIs to invite foreign researchers to spend up to 12 months at their institution to integrate into one of the research projects. And what's especially attractive to US PIs is that these can be divided into 3-month blocks. So you could have somebody, if you have a project that runs for 3 or 4 years, you would have a US researcher come during the 3 summer months for up to 4 years and really be able to work with individual PhD students in the project, but also to be able to really work physically in the summer in Germany, but then via Skype and email the rest of the year and really contribute in some way. And I think that was the most important thing that I wanted to say in terms of programs. A couple of slides here at the end in terms of where to find more information. Every 3 years we fund and publish something called the Funding Atlas, which is, we Germans don't like rankings. We think there's lots of reasons why lots of universities are excellent. But every 3 years we put together a funding atlas where you can see which universities are especially good at certain disciplines. And that just came out last year in German, and just a couple of months ago actually in the English version, which you can find on our website. We also have something called the Research Explorer, which is more or less an interactive phone book for German departments. And finally, GEPRIS on the top right here of my slide, which is the online database of all funded projects. So especially if you're looking as a doctoral student for with whom to do a postdoc with, this is a wonderful way to see which PIs are doing what in Germany, or for more senior PIs to try to find collaboration partners in Germany. This works as well. And as a final stage, I also wanted to show these two web addresses at the bottom here, which have a large number of very useful brochures that focus on the one side on disciplinary things, and that's on the right, these little brochures, and the left side has a number of overview brochures that some of our colleagues from the German Ministry for Research and Science have put together to really help you try to understand how to do a doctorate, a postdoc, to research in Germany, and collaborate with German PIs. And I think that's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vögler. We're going to go ahead and move over to our next presenter, which is, we're going to introduce Peter VanDerwater. Peter VanDerwater is the Director of Outreach for the Fulbright Scholar Program. The program is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State. Peter, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. I will go ahead and hopefully share my screen. All right, there we go. All right, excellent, thank you. So yes, I'm representing the Fulbright Scholar Program. I'm the Director of Outreach for the Institute of International Education, which is the non-governmental organization that has implemented the program since its inception. Some very brief overview of kind of who we are and what the program is for those of you who do not know much about it. We reached our 70th anniversary this year, so it's been around for a long time. It's sort of the flagship international academic exchange program for the United States. Some of you may be familiar with the Fulbright Student Program, which is for research and teaching for everyone up until PhD level or sorry, postdoc level. And then I work with the Fulbright Scholar Program, which is basically, simply put, more PhD and beyond, but there are some caveats that I want to share here as well. It was established to strengthen the relationships between the U.S. and citizens of the rest of the world. So that's really important to note because I think it's a little bit different than some of the other funding opportunities in that there's a very sort of heavy or looming subtext in this. There are individual awards for teaching and research, but the fundamental purpose of the program is to promote mutual understanding, public diplomacy, and it's through a series of bilateral, binational agreements between the United States and other countries. So that's a big part of what Fulbright is all about, in addition to sort of the individual specific research and teaching projects that our grantees embark on. It's sponsored by the U.S. Department of State. It's funded by U.S. Congress in part, and also by many countries around the world. Foundations also help sponsor awards, and so do a lot of American and international universities also have some cost share as well. So it's a tremendous partnership program. And it's administered by my organization, the Institute of International Education. I'm going to start really broad strokes here and talk mainly about the core Fulbright U.S. Scholar Program, which is sort of the one that most people tend to know about. This one supports teaching and research or research activity for 3 to 12 months. We're active in over 125 different countries, and it's for faculty, administrators, and professionals outside academia. We see artists, we see lawyers, we see kind of a range of different activities as well. It really is open to all disciplines that you can think of that are currently taught in sort of the U.S. higher ed environment. And here's a little kind of a stat to show you how the grants have been broken down. There's roughly about 800 grants that are awarded each year to scholars. And so the percentages here, you'll see quite a few involve some teaching and some research or research only. And then there's still a large number of lecturing grants, lecturing only too. We're right now preparing to launch what we call the competition for 2018-19 academic year. It'll launch at the very beginning of February with a catalog of awards, which I'll mention in a moment. And the deadline to apply is August 1st. And that's pretty standard every year. And it's something to kind of put on your calendar as well. Most hosts are a higher education institution, but we do see a kind of a range outside of that that you'll notice there. brief eligibility for this on the US side, obviously it's a bilateral program, so we do bring visiting scholars from abroad to the United States, but I'm focusing mainly on the US program today. And you need US citizenship. And I think it's sort of a myth. I think a lot of people think you have to have a PhD in order to pursue this, and that's not actually the case anymore. A lot of awards do require a PhD or a terminal degree if it's a discipline that a PhD is not the standard terminal degree. But there are many that are open to applicants with a master's in professional and academic experience. And professionals and artists outside academia, you don't have to be affiliated with an academic institution to apply. But we do see some independent researchers, independent scholars who apply. And teaching experience, if you're going to be teaching through your award, you will need to demonstrate some teaching experience as well. For those of you who have previously had Fulbright Scholar grants, there are policies on having additional ones. There's a 2-year waiting period between receiving one grant and accepting another one. And they do have a preference for people who have not had Fulbright Scholar grants in the past. You're still eligible to apply, but it is kind of factored into the peer review process of looking at people who have not previously had these grants in the past and making sure that they are viewed favorably through the process. And just a brief overview, this varies. All of these awards are created, all these grants are created in country. So either the Fulbright Commission in that country for about 49 different countries, and then or the U.S. Embassy will administer the program in that country, and they set these awards. They work with the host institutions in those countries and create these awards. So these grant benefits vary drastically, well, I wouldn't say drastically, but across the program and across different countries. So you definitely want to take a look at what is involved in this. But in general, it involves base stipend, living allowance, housing allowance. There may be some travel, relocation, excess baggage, book allowance, research allowances, depending on the country, dependent tuition, and other things related to this that may come into play, or language allowance if that's needed. And then the Fulbright Commission and U.S. Embassy provides support and other resources while you're in that country. So moving on to sort of a few kind of highlights or interesting things to note about this program. And this might be useful to those of you who are familiar with it, but maybe your knowledge dates back to a few years ago. There's been a lot of change and innovation within the program, starting with this expansion of what we call Flex Awards, which allows you to take that traditional grant experience of 3 to 12 months and actually break it up into 2 or 3 visits over 2 years. So as opposed to being gone for a semester or a year sabbatical to go on a Fulbright, you can find a way to make it work so that you can go 2 or 3 times over the course of 2 or 3 years for shorter stints. That's a really popular option that is offered in a lot of different countries, not all of them. So it's important to take a look carefully to see if it is offered, if that's of interest. And then something newer than the Flex Awards, what we call the Global Scholar Award. Fulbright's always sort of existed as this kind of bi-national program. So a scholar would typically go from the U.S. to India, or go to the U.S. from the U.S. to Brazil. But it was always one-to-one, with some opportunities for regional experiences within the certain 6 world regions that we work with. But we launched the Global Scholar Award, which allows you to go to 2 to 3 different countries in the course of 2 years. And we had our first sort of group of this going this past year, and there's a project example of somebody in biological sciences who was awarded a Global Scholar Award this past year. That should show a little bit more about what types of projects might fit into the context of the Global Scholar Award. And another thing to note is it really ranges by career level. We have seen a huge expansion in our postdoctoral or early career awards. There are awards for newly minted PhDs, people who are kind of starting to launch their academic careers and looking for Fulbright as a way to help them do that. So those are usually within the first 5 years after receiving their PhD, and also Distinguished Chairs Award, which are more for senior scholars who have a significant publishing record and are established in their field. There's a number of those as well. And a snapshot in biological sciences that I really wanted to highlight here, just to give you a sense. This past competition, so this past year for the 2017-18 academic year, which the application deadline for that had closed in August, so that's closed, but there were 76 awards in 49 different countries that specifically mentioned biological sciences as a discipline. And awards, we use awards and grants differently. Awards are sort of like an opportunity. Grants are actually the funding. So for those 76 awards, it would probably equate to probably close to 100 or 125 grant opportunities. So, and specifically mentioning biological sciences. And then there are 366 what we call all discipline awards, and these are really that. They're really open to all different disciplines, including biological sciences. So you look at that, and you see, over 400 different opportunities in your field each year for you to look at. And this is sort of gives you an idea of what are some of the past Fulbright scholars have done in the field of biological sciences and in the countries they did them in. So you see that the projects are very specific to things that they're interested in, and they have to fit within the context of the award catalog. So the awards provide sort of guidelines, sort of general like job descriptions about what the host institution or the host country is expecting of you. But then you have a lot of freedom to create a project that works for you, that makes sense for you within that context. So you see there's quite a few there to view. And on our website, I can show you at some point there's a whole list of past projects going back many years, what countries, what discipline, what project title was, what the host institution was, so you can get a sense of what other people have done. I wanted to note that also sort of different than some other grant opportunities, it's an individual grant. It doesn't provide funding for your home institution. Scholars apply on their own. You have to have letters of reference, but it's an individual project. So you're coming at this very much with a sense of what you want to do and what you can offer. And I wanted to also make a note of something else that may be a little bit different in terms of, I'm not going to go into details on how to apply or what goes into a project statement, but I wanted to just mention this if you're thinking about this option. There's also a heavy emphasis on showing impact beyond you. So beyond you're doing this research project, how this is going to benefit you if you're going to publish or you're going to advance the field, that's great. That's really great, but we want to see also how is it going to impact the host institution? What are they going to benefit from this? When you return home to your home institution, how are your students or your colleagues going to benefit from this? Do you feel like this international experience, this international dimension is going to change how you do research or the type of research you're doing or the types of courses that you're offering? Do you hope to establish ongoing collaboration with this host institution and set up sort of a partnership with your home institution? These types of things are things that we want to consider, because that is what really adds the Fulbright element to these programs, is that idea of what happens after, what is the multiplier effect of your project. So that's something that I really want to emphasize here. And finally, I just wanted to mention a couple relevant programs that may be of interest to you in the future. Fulbright is evolving, and we've developed these new models of these applied research, collaborative research programs. They're each about 1.5 years in length, and they involve 3 meetings around the world. They involve a lot of online collaborative research with cohorts of scholars and around certain themes, and they're interdisciplinary in nature. So you'll see here for Nexus, there were 20 in the cohort, and 4 were in the biological sciences. And the Fulbright Arctic Initiative, 2 were in the biological sciences. And these bring together teams around multiple disciplines to discuss critical world issues today and kind of come up with solutions. So there's individual projects, there's group projects. They involve junior researchers as well as lead scholars who are a little bit more advanced in their career. And this model is really a favorite model that I think is going to expand more and more. We expect that there will be another Arctic initiative launched in the spring. I'm not sure about Fulbright Nexus, but we're talking about other types of models like this that will be coming about. So it's something to keep your eye on. It's not the traditional Fulbright. It's a little bit different, but it's something that I think you'll see a little bit more of within the field. So I'll end there because I know there's probably lots of questions for everyone, but this is some snapshots of our website and the catalog of awards, which is going to change. That URL is going to change, but that's a place to go if you want to see kind of what some of the past awards look like and how that works. And there's my contact information if you have any other questions. So I think I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move over to the Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and type it into the question and answer feature that we have in Zoom. We do have one question so far. We have one that is, are there complementary efforts with France and NAR similar to DFG's great partnership / cooperation with Germany, a similar US-based office?
So there's not. On the French embassy here in DC actually has a large science section, and CNRS does have an office in DC. But ANR, as the French funding agency, does not, although they do come to town for meetings on a regular basis. But the French embassy is a wonderful treasure trove of information, and I think it's easy to contact them and get information on any programs.
Great.
Yes. In fact, most of the embassies here in DC have a science counselor, and who serve the diaspora community and those who are international here in the U.S. You're able to contact those science counselors for information.
Great. Somebody also asked if there is a similar program as DFG in Austria.
Yes, although again not DC based, but the Austrian embassy actually has a really good diaspora network, which is called OSTA, O-S-T-A. And if you Google OSTA and Austria, you'll be able to find the office, which is based here at the embassy, and they have a wonderful mailing list and a good newsletter. So they're also a very good trove of information.
Great. And this is actually directed to you, Dr. Vögler. How does DFG treat individual research grant proposals that are in collaboration with projects already funded by the NSF?
In that case, the German proposal would be standalone, and we would require the German PI to demonstrate how his or her work is going to collaborate or be complementary to the things that are already ongoing with the U.S. I mean, we see that on a number of occasions, especially with larger centers or larger grants, where you often have things that are ongoing in other places as well, and you're trying to sort of match up with what's happening.
Great. Just waiting for a couple more questions to come in. Let's just give everybody a minute or two to go ahead and type those in. While we wait, do any of you guys want to touch on anything that maybe you weren't able to touch on in the presentation, or are you guys okay while we wait for them to type them in?
Max mentioned DFG funding for workshops, and we also similarly at NSF provide funding for workshops to explore international collaborative activities. And we do it, like Max said, where we usually do it in collaboration with one of our international partner funding agencies, and we'll fund the U.S. researchers to participate in the workshop, and our partner funding agency will fund their researchers to be part of the workshop as well.
Okay, great. We have more of a statement than a question. Somebody wanted to just go ahead and point out that there is an office of Eurexis, I can't pronounce that, North America, which offers free information on funding opportunities for PhD, postdocs, and more experienced scientists in all European countries.
Yes, and I would emphasize that Vicky is a wonderful person, and she runs that office really great, and she's also a wonderful treasure trove of information on all things early career research in Europe.
Great. This question is actually for Dr. Keiser. Can Dr. Keiser expand on the international opportunities for postdoc researchers?
Sure. A number of our research directorates have postdoctoral fellowship programs. And all of those programs, you can propose a project that is international in nature. And when that happens, then that comes to our office for a second review. And so what I would do is I would just Google postdoctoral fellowships at NSF, and the ones in different disciplinary areas will come up. And hopefully there'll be one in your discipline that you can apply to.
Great. For the Fulbright Fellowship, there's a lower priority for returning Fulbrighters. Is that also true if the discipline has changed, for example, biological sciences to arts and crafts?
Well, that's a big discipline change. That's fascinating. I'd like to hear the backstory on that one. So I guess I should probably explain that a little more greater detail. The Fulbright program is governed in part by the J. William Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board, which is a presidentially appointed board that sort of sets policies for the program. A number of years ago, they made a ruling to try to make sure that we were spreading funding out more broadly to new people as opposed to having Fulbright scholars continue to apply. And they set lifetime limits of how many Fulbright grants you could have. They got rid of that rule a few years ago, but they still wanted to sort of emphasize that they still wanted to encourage people who hadn't had that opportunity. But effectively, we do still see repeat Fulbrighters. And if you make a strong case in your project proposal for why and how this is different than your previous Fulbright grant, and again, how it will benefit you, your host institution, and your home institution, that's sort of what we're looking for. So if you change disciplines, if you can really demonstrate, this is different, it's not just an add-on or it's not the same thing, that's a great way to approach it. And I think it's certainly possible. We do definitely see people who have repeat Fulbright grants. You just want to demonstrate how this will have additional impact or different impact than previously.
Great. This is actually a question about for the NSF International Research Experience for Students program. Do those proposals allow for research costs for research being done at international sites as well, or just for student funding?
That's exactly right. So it's costs as well as funding. So as part of the principal investigator's budget that they submit into us, it will include the travel funding for the students to do the experience abroad, as well as the cost to actually perform the research, both abroad as well as whatever research they have to do in the U.S. that's part of the project as well.
Great. And this is another question is, what is the success rate for Fulbright applications?
I'm sorry?
What is the success rate?
Success rate. It's a sort of a complicated question to answer because the program is broken up by so many different countries and you apply specifically for certain awards within certain countries. So some countries are much more competitive. Some awards are much more competitive than others. I think roughly when you look at program wide, it's probably a 4-to-1 application to grant ratio, but that really varies. You may find an award where it's 10 or 15-to-1, and one where it's very specific, and it may be in a smaller, overlooked country that there's a very good opportunity of getting a grant offered. So it's hard to answer that without a huge caveat because they are specific opportunities that people apply for, and it's not just and they're each decided individually by those countries and by peer review committees. So so it has to kind of have a lot of context to answer that one. But I think roughly speaking, broadly, if you looked at numbers overall, it's around 4-to-1 ratio.
Great. All right. It looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. I want to go ahead and thank everyone for joining today's webinar. Please visit our website to find out about any upcoming webinars that we're having and to watch recordings of this webinar and past webinars in our series at AIBS.org. We'd like to thank Burke Inc. for sponsoring this webinar, in addition to thank all of our panelists for joining today. We would also like to thank our individual and organizational members for their support. Without them, we would not be able to provide these informative webinars. If you're not a member yet, please join us today. Enjoy the benefits of AIBS membership and help bring biology to life. I'd also like to mention that AIBS will be on Science Friday today. Julie Polakovich-Carr, our public policy manager, will be one of 3 guests discussing the science legacy of President Obama. So we hope you'll stay tuned for that at 2:20 Eastern Standard Time. So again, thank you everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you to all of our panelists. We really do appreciate it.